What's up, guys? Welcome to Cannabis Science. We're focused on higher learning. I'm DDR002. Welcome to Elevated Science. Today we're going to be talking about the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system is a long story, but let's start with how it was discovered. It was actually discovered by an Israeli doctor, Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, in 1992. The Israelis have actually been on the forefront of cannabis science since the early 60s. Dr. Raphael Mechoulam is actually the godfather of cannabis. He was the first to synthesize CBD as well as THC in the early 60s, and one of the first to actually start doing studies with CBD in the 70s or so. Let's actually talk about the endocannabinoid system itself. It's actually made up of not just a few cells, but hundreds of millions of cells. In fact, there are more cannabinoid receptor sites in cells in the body than any other cell. The endocannabinoid system is made up of a network of cells and cellular receptor sites. This, in turn, makes up a network. All these millions of cells are actually capable of speaking to each other. These cells and cell receptor sites are actually found in our organs, throughout our skin, everywhere. There are over 100 different organs in the body that you could find cannabinoid receptors in. So when you're thinking about the endocannabinoid system, look at it like the internet of our bodies. Basically the network that all these individual cells speak to each other. So if my liver is having some issues because it's overstressed, that network is able to send a small packet of information to another cell to let that know that your liver is having some issues. So let's go get some white blood cells there. White blood cells act like little email packets of information. They go to the problem area and provide healing and anti-inflammatory benefits to that problem area. This internet of our bodies, aka the ECS or endocannabinoid system, is essentially responsible for bringing our body to homeostasis. And what that means is bringing our bodies back to balance. If we're feeling sluggish, if we're having stomach aches, if we're having headaches, generally it's going to be due to some sort of an imbalance. Now, whether that's because you ate too much sugar and now you got a headache, or maybe you've drank too much alcohol, now you're too dehydrated, that is an imbalance. You fix that with water. There are multiple ways your body can become in balance. Now, by having a healthy endocannabinoid system, when your body is become dysregulated or you do eat some junk food, it actually is able to get itself back on track a little bit quicker when we have a healthy endocannabinoid system, because those cells are able to speak to each other so they can get to that inflamed gut and decrease that inflammation after you just had a bunch of gummy bears or sour keys. Now, you can look at these individual cells and receptor sites as small little computers in our bodies. These little cells or receptor sites are able, like computers, to transfer information to other cells and organs in our bodies. Let's talk about cannabinoids and cannabinoid receptors. There are multiple cannabinoid receptors. However, the two primary cannabinoid receptors that the most research has been done on is the CB1 and the CB2 receptor. The CB1 receptor is found primarily throughout the central and peripheral nervous system, but with the highest density concentrated in the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is very important because it's actually responsible for your sight, hearing, and basic motor function. When you stimulate the CB1 receptor with THC, which is the main cannabinoid that stimulates that receptor site, that basically heightens all of your senses. So it really turns on your cerebral cortex. Now, this is why sometimes it can be a little overwhelming for people who have never experienced this before. When you light up the brain that much, it's almost like a sensory overload. This can be very overwhelming for someone who's just never experienced cannabis before. This can be a lot harder as you get older. So people who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, low and slow is always the best way to go so you don't get too overwhelmed with the cannabis experience. Interesting fact with THC, a beautiful cannabinoid that we all love for its stimulating effects, is that in lower doses it actually creates a greater density of CB1 receptors throughout your body. This creates a larger high effect. Now, when you smoke less weed on a regular basis, you don't need nearly as much to get high because you have far more receptor sites to take it in. For those who are smoking a lot of cannabis or using a great deal of cannabis, this is the opposite. The body actually starts taking away those CB1 receptor sites because it doesn't have the need for it, because generally people are ingesting so much THC, they only need a few receptor sites to really get the full effects from it. This is why over time, those who do smoke cannabis feel a lesser high and more of a cutoff point. Rarely feel the overwhelming effects from cannabis because they have a lower density of CB1 receptors throughout their body. Let's talk about the other cannabinoid receptor, the CB2 receptor. Now, these are also found in the nervous system, but they're primarily found in the peripheral nervous system and our endocrine system. Now, this is responsible for hormone regulation and immune function. The cannabinoid that actually fills the CB2 receptor site is CBD. That has the greatest benefit on the CB2 receptor site, where that is able to fill those receptor sites and start bringing balance to your endocannabinoid system. This allows your body to start pumping out the hormones or the opioid effects that people feel when they're experiencing pain in their body. It basically allows your body to deal with pain and inflammation far better. CB2 receptors are responsible for immune modulation in both humans and animals. Now, studies have shown with mice with lower CB2 receptor sites were more prone to infection, inflammation, and disease compared to mice with greater CB2 receptor sites. Studies have also shown that people who are suffering from migraines, fibromyalgia, and IBS have a lower amount of CB2 receptor sites in their body. This can actually be fixed with low doses of 1-to-1 CBD and THC tinctures, or by smoking cannabis in very low doses. This can increase CB1 and CB2 receptor sites in people who are suffering from these diseases and help them re-regulate their bodies and allow their bodies the proper environment for them to be able to heal themselves. Now, CBD is so powerful because it's actually capable of increasing genes that are capable of dealing with oxidative stress throughout the body, decreasing inflammation and cell damage throughout the cells in our body. Let's wrap this all up. The endocannabinoid system is an amazing system. It's actually been evolving with humans and vertebrae and invertebrate for over 600 million years. This system is a network in our body that allows our organs and cells to speak to each other. When our endocannabinoid system is functioning optimally, we're able to bring our body back to homeostasis quicker. We've also learned about the CB1 and CB2 receptors. CB1 receptors being responsible for the high that we get, primarily found in the cerebral cortex of the brain, which is responsible for our motor function. Our CB2 receptors, which are found primarily in our peripheral nervous system, responsible for immune function and hormone regulation. And we also learned about THC, which gets us high, and CBD, which helps us regulate our endocannabinoid system and immune function. Now you guys know all about the endocannabinoid system and how it functions. I am not a real doctor. This is all my own research. I could be wrong on all of this. Go do your own research, guys. This is just to spark your own interest. Cannabis science is a beautiful, magnificent thing. I think it's a really easy way to heal a lot of us humans and get us back on track. So thanks for joining me, guys. Thanks for joining the Elevated Science crew, where we are focused on higher learning. Go check out my Instagram, DDR002. Come do some elevated learning with me. For those watching on Instagram, go check out my YouTube channel and check out the rest of this video. Go check out the Elevated podcast, where we have guests who are in the cannabis industry and we talk about their history with cannabis and the future of cannabis.